where not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts, unabridged, the history, what body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out. From WBRN Radio and riding on the Boston Red Network, the episode Friday Jobber on the last, this will be the last Friday Jobber for the month of February, which is a leap month, so we'll leap into an extra day, 29th, and congratulations to those that were born on February the 29th. The political calendar is very interesting, and we'll have some commentary on it from none other than Carl Robe. We'll read parts of what he has to say here. The title of his rendition, Last Stand Against Bernie Sanders, and we'll put our input in as we usually do. And we'll look at some of the current polling out of South Carolina. Now, South Carolina, the primary is tomorrow on Saturday, which we congratulate them for that. And they'll also have, I believe, paper ballots there in South Carolina. A very interesting situation there. And then we go to Super Tuesday. A bunch of states will be involved in it. And perhaps it would be more appropriate to say Super Tuesday would be which is March the 3rd, for many of these candidates. We'll go over some of the polling and look at it. But the top item in both the political world and in the world of economics, the COVID-19 virus. Now, the stock market had what they call an adjustment this week, basically dropping. The Dow dropped, basically 14 points. I believe it's between 14 and 13. NASDAQ down about 13 for the week. The line, and this is from our numbers man, a unit which we partner with Crescent Analytics, the same people that bring you the infamous Ouija board model. Anyway, nonetheless, the COVID-19 virus is a virus that is out there. DJ Trump held a news conference, and he talked about it. But in a almost fairy tale type adventure, he appointed his vice president, Mike Pence, the former governor of Indiana, the same person that let an HIV virus, he's in one county there, get out of control. Then he changed. Pence has really no experience at all in this. Now there's a situation that some people from the CDC can't speak until they're cleared from the White House. He was in South Carolina tonight talking about it, and he called it another Democratic hoax. The word hoax should never be used in the world of viruses, the medical world. Now, what we have here is an age-old battle between science and things that are non-science. Nancy Pelosi spoke about this, verifiable science. The whole basic issue here is science is science. Science has been science since the coming out of the Stone Age, primarily. In other words, it's traced back hundreds of years. We've had science. It's like the issue is the Earth round, is the Earth flat. Well, that was settled 400, 500 years ago. So, but when you have these kinds of situations occurring, like the flat Earth morons out there, and the basic conspiracy theories that are fanning the flame of all sorts of things. You have the anti-vaccine people, and at the same time you have the climate change deniers, the Holocaust deniers. You have a bunch of people out there that are using negatives. But in this type of operation, the COVID-19, those types of stances simply will not work. What will occur here, either science will win the day or science will not. And then basically these characters can go back to believing in rocks or whatever they believe in and see if that will cure their situation. The virus containment in the city of Wuhan. Now that's a city literally of 11 million people plus. And they had 500 million of those people on the road during the Chinese New Year. So they were able to keep the number of cases down there because the Chinese government, under their Communist Party Central Committee, was able to quarantine people, close off entire cities, etc., across the gamut. And you still had basically 79,000 cases there, over 3,000 deaths. But now you have the virus in the Republic of Korea, known in this country as South Korea, and that count is up. My cheat sheet here, the count keeps going up, but it's over 3,000 people infected in South Korea alone. So thus you are having the improved counts every day and the number of people that died. What happens with these types of viruses, we saw it with SARS and various others. The news media is flashing the number of people affected, number of people that have died from it, and other underlying conditions. The problem is what parameters are set up for the testing. Now, in China, they have better tests that they are able to do this. The people in Korea, they are now starting, I believe, one of my notes here, they have tested, I believe it's 70,000 if I wrote it down here. We'll have to do a little bit better here with our, about 70,000. But then you go to Iran. Now, Iran, the problem in Iran was a little bit different. They have been under embargo there, partial medical embargo. Thus, their medical centers do not have some of the most up-to-date equipment because they simply just could not buy it. Now, they have received test kits from China, So now they do have some test kits in the country, and they have, I think, 20,000 mass was sent, 200 test kits. Now, you would think, well, okay, they're upgrading there. But what this highlights more than anything else, we'll flip over to the political. Well, let's one more item here. The Federal Reserve, that is, Chairman Powell has said that the Federal Reserve will do whatever in their power to correct any deficiencies within the economy. We'll have more on the Numbers Man show, that is the Numbers Man side of WBNR Radio and our Boston Red Network. So we'll flip back to the political side, and that's the allocation of who gets what, literally. Here, and the Trump people asked for something like $2.5 billion appropriation. It'll be much more than that, and it will be much more before it's over. One of the bills, I believe, was Chuck Schumer, that asked for something like $8.5 billion, but that's just starters. Now, here's the basic issue here. The testing kits from California, the governor there was talking about it. They now have to send the samples to a centralized laboratory, CDC laboratory. Now, that does take time. They do not have the laboratories in many of these centers, and when you look at California, it would be one of the largest economies in the world, most populous states. So that brings to question how ready is the U.S.? The simple short answer, it is not. I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about medical centers. Very, very important. Could they be overwhelmed? Yes, because many of these medical centers, particularly in smaller cities, towns, rural areas, have closed down. They don't have one. And since they don't, they have regional centers, but how many beds does a regional center have? That's what has to be brought into question, is how many centers they have, how much equipment they have. And I was looking at another individual here, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, that was BBC, we'll get to it in a minute, that was charged almost $4,000 for a COVID-19 diagnostic from his insurance company. Now, this brings to a central issue, Bernie Sanders, whom we support, Medicare for all. Because what tends to happen with these types of epidemics, and this won't be the last one, or it could be a pandemic, it stretches an existing healthcare system. Now, in the U.S., the healthcare system is dodgy. Some people have good healthcare. Some metropolitan areas have adequate medical health centers. But then again, it gets back to how many beds do they have? They have enough beds to accommodate most of them. I know when I was in hospital around Santa Day, the beds were there, but we were moved around from a neurology unit, that's where they usually kick people with strokes, to finally a cardiological unit there to be there for testing. Anyway, it just shows the shortage of actual beds. You had people in the ER waiting there to get tests or whatever, or to get various kinds of procedures. But the U.S. system is not what they put it out to be. So what Bernie should be doing, and he started to do, is talk about the COVID-19 virus and where it applies to the American healthcare system. Now, DJ Trump's ranting and raving about the politicalization. What has to be understood here from day one, this is Political Science 101, our government course we used to teach, and I remember when we even taught high school government. Anyway, the whole point is it's who gets what and how, as the allocation of resources. And anytime you have any type of system, a healthcare system, who gets the money for the healthcare system? Billions of dollars are spent on healthcare. And at the time of that they were working on legislation for the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, the right wing said that, well, this will destroy the healthcare system. Literally. Thousands of people would be made redundant or fired. Did not happen. The healthcare system is now very, very strong. There are more workers in healthcare than ever been in the history of the U.S. So that we know. But when you start talking about pandemics, and especially people with various kinds of pre-existing conditions, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, etc., and we'll get more of that as it comes in, but when you have those kinds of people, do you have the medical personnel? Are there enough nurses out there? There obviously are not enough family physicians out there, internists or whatever they want to call those. So those are questions that will be exacerbated in this particular situation. And this is a political part of it. And the longer this goes on, and from what we know at this point in time, and we at Cranston Analytics have been literally exploring this, and not only that, but looking at such places as where it will appear, called targeting. The CDC has about 40 or so cities pre-targeted where it could be a breakout, but it could be in Asheville, the Carolina, or it could be in outside of Los Angeles. Now they have 2 cases, I believe, up in Northern California, up in that area. And one of those patients, and maybe 2, had not traveled anywhere other than around the area. So they're now seeing if any contacts the lady had seen, and this another gentleman, had did any traveling, or they have any associates, or at their workplace or whatever. That's how the epidemiologist type investigations go. But if you start in the U.S. here, in particular, start having people in these diverse places like Albany, New York, or wherever, or Binghamton, New York, that people have not traveled. And no one in the immediate area they know of has traveled to China or have any connection with China or with Korea. There are 50 countries now, so there can be a lot of countries. Then you have a pandemic. Now, you may only have, say, in Binghamton, New York, maybe you'll get out of that 25 or so active cases. But that's 25 or so active cases, and they maybe all be mild, but they still have to be attended to. And by the Trump administration calling this a hoax, that is a losing proposition from day one. Let's go to Uncle Carl here and get him out. His title again is The Last Stand Against Bernie, winning the popular vote in Democratic presidential race at first 3 contests. Bernie has received generous accolades. He has crowded a strong front runner, a strong. I need to clean my glasses. With many already deciding him the presumptive nominee. Too early for that. It said he has an insurmountable lead and a powerful hold on the party's faithful. The senator from Vermont may well become the nominee in July, but let's put things in perspective. There are 3,976 pledged delegates to the Democratic Convention. That does not include the so-called new superdelegates that we had before 2016. Now camouflage, he says, automatic delegate votes who can vote only if there's a second ballot. Now, a candidate therefore would need 1,990 pledged delegates to win on the first ballot, and so far only 101 have been allocated. South Carolina will award 54. Now that is more than Iowa, and I believe New Hampshire, I have to check my deal on that, would be a small part of a small crowd in the Milwaukee's deal there. Bernie has 45 delegates thus far, 25 to Little Petey, and 15 to Joe Lunchbox Biden, 8 to Liz Warren, and 7 to Amy Klobuchar. Well, no doubt he's nowhere where he needs to win, but it's also worth noting that Sanders has won 3 contests with very low share of the vote, while he took Iowa with 26.5% of the final vote there. And in, 2016, Hillary edged him out 49.8 to 49.6. That's 0.2 of a point amongst pledged delegates. Voters shared figures that weren't released with split field. Sanders' share of the vote this time was the lowest amongst winners in the history of the Iowa caucus. At 26.2, his delegate share was 5 points below the next lowest. That was Dick Gephardt, the late Dick Gephardt of Missouri, out of St. Louis, 31.3. That was in 1988. Similarly, Sanders took Vermont with 25.7 of the vote, the lowest in the state history, and 34 points less than his 61.1 that was in 2016. Only in Nevada, a multicultural state. My words, not Uncle Carl. 46.8 of the share of convention delegates last week, and approximately his share from 2016. So he basically kept his people in, but they had to be sorted differently. The largest number of more traditional Democratic candidates to his right is helping the self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist win contest with low voted shares. In New Hampshire, comparatively speaking, the trio of Little Petey, Amy, and Joe Lunchbox Biden received a combination of 52.6 votes to Sanders' 25.7. Yet, because the Democratic Party awards Democrat delegates proportionally amongst the candidates who receive more than 15%. The Vermont got 37.5 of the United States votes. This distortion will become more pronounced on Super Tuesday, and then Mini Mike enters there, boosted by massive ad blitz and army organizers, paid organizers. In a previous broadcast, we talked about some of Bloomberg's little helpers. They get $2,500 a month to retweet things from Bloomberg Central. This in turn could boost Sanders' delegation strength even higher above his share of each state's vote. Overcrowded lanes of Democratic candidates who appear to be moderate and traditional liberals is fueling the sense that Sanders will eventually win the nomination. Poor Super Tuesday numbers and a lack of funding will follow, however, may thin the field, perhaps allowing one traditional Democrat to emerge as Sanders' lone person. Bite Nore. Anyway, the contest could still surprise, especially if Biden wins South Carolina soundly and picks up momentum for Super Tuesday. Alternatively, if he caters, traditional Democrats could move towards someone who looks like he can stop the burn. Well, the burn will continue on. No doubt about that. Now, a note about South Carolina. South Carolina, the majority of people in South Carolina are followers of O.J. Simpson. They are African Americans, but they are by and large more conservative African Americans than African Americans nationally. We're doing a special here for African History Month, February, a short month, but nonetheless it'll be on the 2020 campaign, the African American vote, and we'll talk more about some of these scenarios. But this was one of the patterns strategies of Hillary DeMonster Clinton, was to go south. She did literally go south, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. To win in these southern red states. Well, South Carolina winning there, so what? You're not going to make very much traction in South Carolina. We look more to see what goes on in North Carolina because it's more competitive. But when you talk about states such as Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana to a certain extent, etc., across the South, Mississippi, Alabama, they are red states, meaning winning their primaries doesn't mean anything. I was reminded of a word that the former speaker, old man Sam Rabin, said when was young Bobby Kennedy was in the room and he ran the SH word and then ran what he called Sonny Boy out. That was in the days of Lyndon Baines Johnson. Anyway, this kind of tells you what's going on here in these southern primaries, so don't be impressed by those. But after Super Tuesday is over, you go into states like, for instance, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Those were states the Monster won. Monster even beat Barack Obama in Pennsylvania. And we looked at the model at the time, and we knew he'd lose Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, Stratton, Pennsylvania, to be more precise, is the home state of Joe Lunchbox Biden. Joe Lunchbox Biden could do well there. Evidently, that was shown in South Carolina. Little Petey was going to have a meeting with small-town mayors and the political establishment there, the Democratic establishment. Representative Claiborne is one. Anyway, they canceled his meeting. He had to cancel it because they'd been told they are going with Joe Biden. Well, they go with Joe Biden. They go with Joe Biden. And that's the way they are going. Let's jump back here a little bit. We'll put the rest of the and do some polling numbers now. Some of this we'll be doing on the week that was. And a little note here, the week that was will be later. It may be an extended one, depending on, we probably will have South Carolina and see what's going on in South Carolina. And on Wednesday morning, sometime, hopefully, or Wednesday, we'll have the results of Super Tuesday, which will be on Tuesday. All right, let's go back here, and we'll go to real clear and see how clear we are. And we'll get a little bit of what's going on in South Carolina. No doubt Joe Lunchbox Biden has improved. But firstly, we go to the Desert News. That is the Hickley poll out of Salt Lake, Utah. The Desert News is owned by the Mormon Church. It shows that Bernie leads by 9. He's at 28. Bloomberg's at 19. Liz Warren is at 15. Little Petey is surprising 18 there. And Joe Biden only 6, and then Amy Klobuchar at 4. This is that's the Democratic primary in Utah. I'm not sure what day they go up, but we have a Fox nationwide poll here. According to it, Bernie's up by 13, and it's a little suspect. And then comes Joe Lunchbox Biden at 18, Bloomberg at 16, and Warren at 10, Little Petey at 12, and Amy Klobuchar, at 5. And we have matchups here. Bernie is up, according to this poll, by 7 over DJ Trump. Biden is up by 8 over DJ Trump. Mini Mike is up by 8 over DJ Trump. Little Petey is up by 3. Liz Warren's up by 3. And Amy Klobuchar is up by 1. For the simple reason her name is not known that well nationally. It all boils down to is how much press you get, usually, especially in the early things, out of Emerson. Polling across the Freedom of the Common. This is South Carolina. Very interesting here. They have Joe Lunchbox Biden up by 16. Biden is at 41. Bernie is at 25. Tom Steyer, I'm seeing him higher in polls. He's at 11. Little Petey is at 11. It's kind of unbelievable. Anyway, Warren is at 5, and Amy Klobuchar is at 6. And Tulsi Gabbard at 2. The mama polling people out of Long Branch, New Jersey, has, this is in South Carolina, has Biden up by 20, even more. And Bernie at 16, Tom Steyer at 15, Little Petey at 6, Warren at 8, and Amy at 4. The Post-Courier, that's the newspaper there in South Carolina, has the race closer, has Biden at 4. 28, and Sanders at 24, Tom Steyer at 16, Little Petey at 11, Liz Warren at 12. And Magellan, I think we go up to the Rocky Mountain state of Colorado. Bernie's up by 12 there, Liz Warren is at 15, Little Petey at 12, Bloomberg at 11, Biden at 11. I think Biden's number may change out in Colorado now, and Amy at 6. And Tulsi Gabbard gets her 1. To Florida, the St. Pete poll there has Biden up, but we could expect that by 9 in Florida, 34 to 25 for Bloomberg. You can see they are trending more conservative there. Bernie has 13 there, Liz Warren at 5, Buttigieg at 8, and Amy at 4. To Wisconsin, Bernie's up by 12, 29 there, and Mini Mike is at 17. Joe Lunchbox Biden at 15, that could improve. Mia Petey at 13, Warren at 9. Amy Klobuchar, she's a neighbor there at 11. She should be doing better in Wisconsin. But nonetheless, if we look at, this is the morning call, Politico has Bernie up by 3 over DJ Trump, has Joe Lunchbox Biden tied with DJ Trump. Bloomberg is up, down by 3 over DJ Trump. And little Petey, DJ leads him by 1. And let's see, Liz Warren and Trump are tied. And Amy Klobuchar is losing by 1 point to DJ Trump. Now more out of Milwaukee, Marquette University has Bernie up by 2, has Biden and Trump tied. It's a fairly close race at this time in the state of Wisconsin between DJ Trump and various others. Trump and Warren, Trump's up by 3, Amy and he are tied. Out of New Hampshire, Trump and Bernie are tied up. Trump is up by 2 on Joe Lunchbox Biden. He's up by 14. It's not good news for Mini Mike. Actually, this poll this is the University of New Hampshire, has little Petey leading by 6. Rasmussen, his approval, I think, was at 52. I'd have to go back there and get the rest of these approval numbers coming in here. Just a minute here. My screen disappeared from me. Anyway, this is kind of interesting. So South Carolina, some of the polls are basically saying he's in much better shape. That was on Thursday, I believe, the numbers I just gave you here. Yeah, and Friday, the first time. Now we go to Tuesday. PPP, they are based in North Carolina, has Biden up by 3. Bernie has 20. Biden has 23. This poses what Carl would be more for that area there. Bloomberg's at 17, Liz Warren at 11, little Petey at 9, and Amy Klobuchar at 4 in this poll. More North Carolina here. It's tied up, Bernie and Biden. This is Civitas poll here. Actually, all tied up. Bloomberg, too, has 20, and Amy has 6. Little Petey is at 3, and Liz Warren at 9. In Maryland, Gotcher College has Bernie up by 6. First poll I've seen from Maryland. Biden at 18. Mini Mike at 16. Buttigieg at 7. Amy at 6. Warren at 6. They're kind of all tied up there a little bit together. And the Hill poll here, a little bit of that's Pinhead. What's his name there? Pinhead Pin. Has Bernie at 28, Biden at 17, Mini Mike at 19, little Petey at 12. That's a conservative poll. This is a nationwide vote. You can get this flowing anyway. And the Morning Consult, that's Politico. The approval rate is at 45, and has the Democrats up by 6. And on Monday, I think we've given these before, NBC News, Marx's poll here, Biden's up by 4, and that's South Carolina. And Bernie at 23, and then comes Tom Steyer. And the rest of the gang, basically speaking here, PPP had Biden up by 15. Now, that's on the 24th. That's one of the first polls to, he's at 36. Then comes Bernie at 21. Steyer and Petey at 7 each, and Warren at 8. And whom else do we have down here? I had not seen this. This is a Sooner poll out of Oklahoma, where Jerry Pippen used to be based. Anyway, they have actually Biden by 121 to 20 over Bloomberg, and Bernie's at 13, little Petey at 10, Warren at 9, and Klobuchar at 7. Out of Texas, University of Houston, has Bernie and Biden at 12,
and Liz Warren at 17, Mini Mike at 12, and along with Petey. And we have Amy Klobuchar at 7. New York has Bernie up by 4 with Mini Mike, and Mini Mike's at 21, Biden at 13, Liz Warren at 11. And Amy and Little Petey are tied up at 9, not bad there. Virginia Roanoke College has Bernie up by 9. That's a matchup between Bernie and DJ Trump. Little Petey's up by 7. Mini Mike's up by 6. That's over DJ Trump. And Joe Lunchbox Biden's up by 8. That looks better for him. So if you start looking at the long map here, as Bernie's point person in South Carolina, Mrs. Or whatever, Termont, said, well, Biden, again, if it's not too little, that he's not to be counted out if he wins in South Carolina. The problem is, on Super Tuesday, many of these states have a lot of early voting going on. So we have seen from Vegas that people that voted early voted probably where the earlier polls are, period. So we'll have to see how that all plays out and how the national polls, so there'll be plenty to do. There's no doubt about that. And just see if I missed anything here. Amy Klobuchar is leading in a home state. That was earlier. And Michigan primary, Bernie's up by 9. And on Joe Lunchbox Biden, Bloomberg, Mini Mike, as he's known, is at 13. Liz Warren's at 13. Little Petey is at 11. Amy Klobuchar brings up the rear there at 8. In Wisconsin, now this is Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin State Journal poll. We'll have to do that one later. Now let me just check quickly some of these polls on the week, but this is the Post-Courier poll here. New polls show Biden holding on to his lead in South Carolina's Democratic primary. Biden holds double-digit advantages over Bernie, and Tom Steyer. His lead is more narrow in the Post-Courier Change Research poll that has... now this is what Bernie's people point to in South Carolina. The margin of error could go either way. But he continues to top polls after coming in second place, showing in Nevada. I'm not sure if that had that much to do with it, but I think it probably reassured some people. His African-American voted back in South Carolina ranges from 34 to 57 in the new poll. Well ahead of his rival. Some came before Biden received the endorsement of Jim Clyburn, the state's most prominent African-American politician, number 3 in the House. The national leader, Bernie, he is hoping to improve his support amongst African-Americans over his 2016 bid, which he lost a lopsided situation to the monster. Most recent polls have found more than 10% of voters undecided since just days before the primary. Now, what's happening there is, in actuality, the undecideds are going to Joe Lunchbox Biden. In 8 previous Post-Courier Change Research polls, the 2020 Democratic race taken during the past year, Biden margin over his challenge have ranged from 31% in May to a low of 5% there as Sanders and Steyer surge. He has never trailed in any of the 34 polls taken in the state, tracked by the Real Clear Politics people. So the latest Post-Courier Change Research poll has Biden leading just 4 percentage points. He received 28 to 24 for Sanders and 16 for Tom Steyer, who is advertised and targeted African Americans there, has talked about reparations, talked about inequality, talked about various other conduct. So it has Liz Warren and Mia Petey at 12 and 11 respectively. Some of the new results have Biden with larger leads. He enjoyed much of that. A Lexington polling consulting firm known for working with Republicans found a one-day poll on Wednesday that Biden held 40% support, with Tom Steyer at 12, Bernie at 11, and Mia Petey and Warren at 9 each. Now and there's also rumors some Republicans in some places perhaps will vote there. And this is it. And the Monmouth poll out of North Branch, New Jersey, has Biden at 36, doubling up Sanders 16%, and Tom Steyer at 15%. Period. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who struggled to gain African American support in South Carolina, failed to get past 6% in any of the new polls. Tulsi Gabbard has lagged at near the rear, but she does better in some places. She's out of Hawaii there. A Clemson University poll released on Wednesday has Biden at 35% to Steyer 17%. And Bernie at 13%. He leads a bit. Is a bit tired. The Winthrop University poll released last week. Before his second place finish there, he held a 5-point advantage over Bernie. Post and Courier Change Research poll of likely 543 voters. The Monmouth poll, these are all fairly small polls at, 450 likely voters there. Margin of error is 4.6%, and the Courier poll is 5.1%. And the Starboard poll is 1,102 likely Democratic voters. That was in fair, had a margin of error of 2.82%. And this is Andy Shen, I suppose is his name. Anyway, he runs the teams in the capital city. He's Columbia is their capital there, and has been a reporting editor in Charlotte, Columbus, and Myrtle Beach. Interesting there. And let me see very quickly here. I don't know if we'll bring the people up out of Biden maintains lead is the headline here. This is West Long Branch, New Jersey. Joe Biden stays well atop Monmouth University. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's M-O-N-M-O-U-T-H. Monmouth. Anyway. The fight there, are likely to participate there, stands at 36%. And we won't go over these again. I already did once. In the Monmouth poll, 33% supported Biden, 16% Warren, 12%. That was in October. So many things have changed. Biden appears to be holding his core supporters amongst African Americans. He's had a recent endorsement of Jim Clyburn. Should solidify that, according to Patrick Murphy, director of Independent, the Monmouth University Polling Institute. African American voters, who form a majority of likely primary voters, he has 46% by a wide margin of 17% over Tom Steyer, 13% for Bernie. With European voters are more divided, with Biden at 26%, followed by Sanders at 12%, Liz Warren at 13%, Booney at Petey, I should say, at 13%, Tom Steyer at 12%. Amongst those who identify themselves as Democrats, 44% back Biden, followed by 15% on Sanders and 14% on Steyer. With the independents identified another party, Biden gets 22% of their vote, Bernie 18%, and Tom Steyer 15%, and Warren 11%. Just 4 and 10 of likely primary voters are set on their choice, including 39% who say they firmly decided, another 4% who have already voted by absentee ballot. Biden at 59% and Bernie at 57% are most likely to have their support locked in. Less than half of those backing other candidates are firmly decided. And this evidently is probably what Biden is getting. Mini Mike's not on the ballot there. A key metric for Biden in this make or break state is that his support seems to be firm. There's a large chunk of electorate who are undecided, but they are mainly moderate African American voters, and that group going to Joe Lunchbox Biden. Few view the results made, then take a second look at the field, with 8% saying they changed their mind about whom to vote. This is after the other contests in New Hampshire, Iowa, and Nevada. Democratic primary voters are looking for electability. 66% say that. Another 15% say electability is as important as their top policy concerns, while 15% says less important than alignment. Amongst those who say beating Trump is top priority, 38% support Biden, 16% Bernie, and only 13% Tom Steyer. Looking at candidates' qualities, 53% of likely Democratic primary voters say they want someone who can unite the country, while 41% say they prefer someone who can bring about change. And that's very interesting there. Super Tuesday states, Monmouth has polled 32% in California and 27% in Virginia. In those states, Sanders is the most popular choice amongst change voters, but in South Carolina, it's Biden at 29% with an edge over Sanders of 20 and Tom Steyer at 18. Biden at 43 has a much larger lead on the uniting factor. Mental state Democratic primaries are divided on the beating Trump in November. Over 4 in 10, 44% think the incumbent will be reelected, while nearly an identical number, 46%, said he will lose to the Democrat. Still, nearly two-thirds of likely primary voters feel optimistic about this year's election. 32 very optimistic, 33 somewhat optimistic there, and the poll was conducted by telephone the 23rd through 25th of February, with 400 voters there, and he has a margin of error of 4.6%. Won't be very much in this particular one, and if you look at some of these polls here, we go back to July, 39% of the people supported Joe Lunchbox Biden, only 10% supported Bernie. And now in February, who do you lead towards? Anyway, 36% in February, and 16% for Bernie in February, and it was 39% for Joe Lunchbox Biden back in July. How things can change. Liz Warren is up to 4%. She was at 1% at that time. So that is where they are. Let us finish up final little article here. We mentioned Katherine Johnson. She died at 101. Mathematician breaks barrier at NASA. She'll be in our special report there. She's one of a group of African American women mathematicians at NASA, and it's a predecessor who was celebrated in the movie Hidden Figures. Were you on this bus with a COVID-19 patient? South Korea is on the hunt for infections, and this is out of Seoul from the LA Times on the 27th. In the weeks before she was diagnosed with the novel coronavirus, patient number 31, she's 61 years old at DG, traveled to Seoul anyway to visit her company's headquarters. She commuted to her work selling mobile gift certificates, ate her fill at a hotel buffet, went on to a traditional medical clinic after getting in a minor accident. She attended services at Daegu branch of the Jesus Church, they call it. It is. Anyway, she prayed shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of followers within hours of positive COVID-19 test. South Korean authorities released details accounting for her whereabouts and addresses of each location she visited. Patient 31's movements shot up as a trend search topic on portals in South Korea. Authorities, they are tracking people using mobile phones, testing hundreds of people who crossed paths with her when they found whom she affected, thousands more who crossed paths with them. So patient 31 is not alone, having her coming and goings mapped through smartphone push alerts and regular briefings streamed live on YouTube. Authorities are publicizing the whereabouts of and movements of more than 1,000 COVID-19 patients. Is contrast to governments elsewhere have been wary of disclosing too much identifying information out of privacy concerns. Doesn't matter there. Largely informed by public criticism of how it withheld information during the outbreak of the Mideast. That was the Mears in 2015. They are erring on the side of transparency. This is in the Republic of Korea, that is. So, the effects here, containment still appears to be far off as the center, this is in Korea again, identified 12 fatalities and 1,261 cases, and 600 are located with the church. A U.S. soldier stationed near Daegu was also tested positive for the virus, becoming the first service member. I wonder is he on his way back to the U.S.? South Korea accounts for the largest number of patients outside of China. They have been less aggressive than South Korea and many countries there. In contrast, tracing and publicizing potential exposures. Other nations also lack the testing capacity. South Korea has run 30,000 tests, many of them over last week. They run more than that now. So they're using everything. And one thing to be noted, these countries, people pay for what they buy much more using credit cards than they would in other countries. And CCTV TV, they're using it also. And emergency push alerts there, very silly, I won't try to pronounce them. It's very good from a public health perspective, having the kind of contact traces. This is from Michael Meniner, Associate Professor of Epidemiology at Harvard's T.H. Chang School of Public Health, who said the detailed data will be critical to experts around the world studying quickly and through which routes of transmission. Showing a worker here, I'll have to put this one up. A medical worker resting Sunday outside of a hospital in Daegu. Anyway. And Singapore-based physician chair of the World Health Organization Global Alerts and Responsive System, this is Dale Fisher, said the best way to curb the spread of the epidemic might be different in each country. Well, that's true, no doubt about that. The South Korean woman known as Patient 31, suspected of being a super spreader behind a massive surge in cases in Southeast Korea, has been the point of intense public interest and scrutiny. She was vilified online, no doubt about that. Fake postage IDs, something we don't want to have on there. More here, the president, Mr. Moon, second from the right, he's standing there, he's got his mask on, and he's not doing any meeting with medical officials. This is in Daegu. Anyway. And more, Catherine Gibney is infectious disease specialist and epidemiologist at Austin Hospital near Melbourne, Australia, says the virus continues to spread globally. Each government will determine how to best prepare its citizens for potential outbreaks. It's really important to get the risks communicated, which they're even trying to do here in the U.S. It's important to balance when a potentially useful for someone to know versus what might cause panics and hysteria. We don't want to put people on panic medication unnecessarily. Now, the Dorji Church here said it would crack down and test all 245,000 members of this church, and more than 750,000 signed a petition urging the president to disband this operation, this church that is. Even having public health officials in charge of infection prevention was revealed to be a member of the church after he was diagnosed with the virus. Oh boy. Sigu, wherever that is. So they're on the hunt for these people, and the reason we brought this story out here from the LA Times is is because this is what starts to happen. People attract, rumors attract, but it seems to be pretty firm here. And this is by Victoria Kim on the 27th. Nonetheless, this will do it for us. This is Boston Red in the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth on the 28th of February 2020. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you on the week that was.